Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the Kubeflow community call for May 28th, 2024. Today we have our agenda lined up, and I do want to remind everyone that this call is being recorded and it is governed by the Kubeflow Code of Conduct. Just as a reference, as we start, I've been asked a few times now to trying to keep the meeting going. So I am going to perhaps just give people time reminders as we go through different topics that we move along. So we're on the first item on the Price is Right here, which is the release update. I believe Ricardo may be back from a fabulous vacation. Would like to hear about his vacation, but let's make sure that we get the 1.9 update as well. Ricardo, are you here alive, back, having fun?
Yes, Josh, I'm here. Thank you. I'm back from vacations. Now I get my batteries recharged for another work with the Kubeflow community. So let's jump into the release updates. We have a new date for releasing 190 RC1, which will be June 3rd, the next Monday. The reason we postpone the RC1 release is waiting on the Istio 122 upgrade and having the Kubeflow repo release cut. I know that the latter one is already in place, and the Istio 122 upgrade, we're working on fixing the tests with regarding the Istio upgrade. Those are important upgrades, so we decided to postpone RC1 release for the next Monday because we need those two upgrades for the next RC1 release. We're still waiting for someone to jump into contributing with upgrading Kaiser models web app. Unfortunately, we're still looking for any front-end contributors that could help us figure out the CVE fixes for this repo. But we understand that this should not block the release for Kubeflow 19, although it will carry over security issues. As with regarding the distribution testing, we got one distribution owner who tested RC0. We found one potential issue, but since it's related to Istio, we're waiting on upgrading to 122 and ask this distribution owner to test RC1 and make sure that this is not an issue anymore. Um, since we got feedback from other distribution owners, they are expecting RC1 to be released to start their own testing, including uh, the OpenShift, where one of the distribution owners. Think that's it for the distribution testing. We're working also on upgrading the documentation. We have some updates in place for pipelines. We already have the model registry documentation in, and we have other updates with regarding training operator and CATDEV. So that's it for the 1.9 updates. If anyone have any questions or comments, feel free to chime in.
So I just want to highlight if anyone here is anyone here from distributions, just as a side note, just I'll quickly go through the quite significant changes that are happening in the Kubeflow apps, if anyone is.
Yeah, go
Um,
for it.
it's yeah, in case someone's watching on the recording, I guess. So the main change is that the central dashboard has been significantly updated. If so, what I would like to see is distributions test that the new features work. So the key new feature is that people should be able to manage contributors from multiple namespaces if they are owners. Additionally, they should be able to see if they are a viewer or an editor or an owner of every namespace um, that they are a member of now. Previously, they could only see it if they were an owner, and even if they were an owner, it didn't really work properly because there was this assumption previously that you were only the owner of a single namespace. Um, as a complete side note, I would still recommend that companies, if they're using it, so if you're hearing this, I'd still recommend not making any of your users owners of any namespace and instead just making them editors or viewers, just because it's a bit of a security risk to let people add and remove users of their namespaces, but that's just a side note. So that's one of the big changes. So on the sidebar, if you click Manage Contributors, you'll be able to try that out. So if you log in as an owner account, make sure that on your process to add and remove users that it still works properly. If you've customized it at all. The next thing is that obviously the UI has changed a little bit. Most of it's still the same, but there are some fixes for like when errors happen in the central dashboard. There's also a slight rearrangement of the sidebar. Now Kubeflow Pipelines has its own section on the sidebar to make it easier to find all of the links because there's quite a few of them. So it now collapses down to a single pipeline section if you're not clicking on one of them. I'm trying to think. So that's central dashboard. If you have any questions, ask them in a second. The second big change is in notebooks. So notebooks, controllers, and everything is still the same. There's no 2.0 available publicly yet. We are working on it. We have started committing code, by the way. So it's not in this release, but just as a side note, if you are interested in participating, the new code is happening on the Kubeflow/notebooks repo for 2.0. So message me on Slack or it's probably not quite ready to just randomly make PRs for yet because we're still scaffolding the three different components. Anyway, I'll come back to that later. Okay, so then in 1.9, the 1.0 notebooks have been updated quite a bit, and by that I mean the notebook server images. So that's like the Jupyter, RStudio, VS Code, CUDA, non-CUDA, whatever these kind of images are. There's only from a user perspective, if your users are using them, there will be breaking changes in some of the API versions internally. What I mean by that is like if you're using PyTorch, we jumped to PyTorch 2.3, which was a pretty recent release. So just be aware of that. You can rebuild the images with your own version. There's now docs to do that more easily. If you want to downgrade to a different one. Similarly with TensorFlow, we updated to TensorFlow 2.16.1. Although the reason we had to update that one is that the older version is actually incompatible with Jupyter 4.2. So I know that sounds ridiculous because TensorFlow shouldn't break compatibility with Jupyter, but it does because of typing extensions. Weirdly, if you're familiar with Python, but so that one trying to downgrade probably won't work. But the breaking changes in those APIs are quite small for TensorFlow. Similarly, we have also changed from installing. This is one thing I really want people to test who have GPU clusters, because I've done a bit of testing, but I don't have, there's things I might have missed. If people could test kind of more complicated TensorFlow jobs on the CUDA images, the reason for that is we've stopped installing the NVIDIA libraries directly from NVIDIA, and we now install them from TensorFlow. So in the same way that PyTorch distributes the NVIDIA CUDA/CUDA-DNN/ whatever else libraries, TensorRT and whatnot, libraries through PyPy, TensorFlow has now started trying to do that as well. There was a few weird issues with TensorRT specifically, and I'll touch on that in one second. But please run kind of any suite of tests that you have. If you have kind of complicated GPU trainings that involve multiple GPUs, please just confirm that it works and that there's no performance drop. Well, I mean, there also could be performance drop because it's a different version of TensorFlow, but like that would indicate that the libraries aren't installed properly. I also want to talk one last thing specifically on TensorRT, which is I'm not a contributor to TensorFlow anymore. It used to be, but not anymore. But like it looks like Upstream has decided to remove support for TensorRT. So this version does include TensorRT, but it's in a coming release of TensorFlow, it looks like they've dropped support for that. So do test it. I think TensorRT is not that popular, but if you happen to use it, please tell me. There's every other package has been updated as well, like RStudio and VS Code or Code Server as it's actually being used, not VS Code directly. If you've got any questions, please raise them. So the two main things to remember are the central dashboard changes and these. Anyway.
Okay, thank you, Matthew.
Can I
guess
ask a
there's
question?
not much updates here.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Andre,
Yes,
I
Andrew?
forgot about your comment, Andre, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just like wondering, so these central dashboard changes, like, are we going to include them in the 1.9? Because historically, it was intended change, like removing the names for pipelines and experiments 3 years ago from Aricto. Just wondering if we find agreement to move them back to the component-specific names on a central dashboard.
So the only one which got its which added back the component name was Katib, and that's just because the word experiments also appears elsewhere on the sidebar.
Yeah.
That's the only reason.
So my point is, like, 3 years ago, we discussed that users don't want to see the components name. They want to see the ML use case name there on a central dashboard. I'm just like wondering, why do we rename them back to the components name?
I thought Katib did more than AutoML though.
No, I mean, like, yeah, but despite on this, like, do we have like an agreement from the notebooks working group on this? Like,
I mean, we can discuss that specific. So again, the only one that was renamed was that one.
but the pipelines also was renamed.
Well, not really. It was just grouped. All the names are still the same.
Um, okay, anyway, I just like wondering because, like, historically, I believe like Aricto was pushing hard to rename it to a different name, to not, like, tell about the user the components name on the central dashboard, not like K-serve, KT pipelines, but be like more kind of, ML specific in the naming.
I mean, what's your preference here? I mean, like, Katib can represent itself however it likes, but what does wouldn't you prefer the name be more precise?
Yeah, I just want to hear, like, user thoughts on this, because I believe like it was intended to remove it, like to rename it back to the, to the different name from KDIP and from pipelines from Kserve. Because what is the, like, user value to tell them about Kserve, like the components on the left side panel on the Kubeflow central dashboard?
Well, I think in this particular case, the value is that the word experiments is quite ambiguous. And it would be hard for them to search on the docs what it even is if they don't know that it's Katib.
Yeah, this
But
is
yeah.
this is available anyway. Maybe we can take it offline. But I just like wondering, because this is a significant change, right? Like, do we want to include them in the 1.9, or we want to have more conversation with, Stefano, Kimonos, folks who
Well, no,
actually.
Kimonos agreed with the changes, but I don't know. I didn't think anyone thought it would be controversial just because the main change is really just grouping the pipelines. But again, we're open to discussion. It's not there's no rule against it. But it is the intention to include this in 1.9. Yes, the reason it was a bit delayed is just because we had some permission issues. Like these were meant to be in earlier, but
All right.
Okay, well, kind of my take on this is anything that changes the central dashboard and the initial view that people see, probably should be communicated early and often, only because it's like the first thing everybody sees, right? And they might go, oh, wow, now it's changed. And so now all the distributions and everybody that uses the central dashboard is going to have to explain to the users, there's been a change. And how do you get
yeah.
to where you were before, right? How do you get to the Kubeflow pipelines? I think it's probably a change for the best. I just think that, we need to make sure that we communicate this, right? And to Andre's point, I mean, it sounds like this is probably the right direction, but we probably should have had a little more discussion wider on something that does impact every single user when they log in.
Also, just as a side note, if you want to revert the change in a specific distribution, you can. There's nothing that's stopping you doing that. It's this like, and so that's how many users add their own sidebar links anyway.
Yeah. Okay. I think we've discussed this. Two questions, one on CVE updates and two on blog post. Any updates on either one of those that are significant here? Ricardo, anything, or Stefano, anybody know where we are with the blog post? Do we have an outline?
Yeah, Stefano is on vacations this week, but as far as I remember, he got a very first draft of it. He's gonna finish this blog post, and then he's going to share for potential reviews before publishing it. For CV fixes, with the exception of the K-server models web app, I believe we have everything covered for CV fixes for the other images, but I'll need to check with Julius, who's working on it.
Fantastic. Okay. Anything else on 1.9 from anyone?
Not from my side.
Anyone else? Okay, let's move on. Main agenda, Matthew.
So we can obviously talk about this at the end if someone else has a more. This is a very like logistical thing that only affects contributors. So is there any other topics first? Let's do the model registry. Let's do model registry on the bottom. Yeah.
Okay, model registry.
Hey Josh, everyone, just very quickly, I just wanted to seize the chance to update the group that we had our bi-weekly meeting yesterday. For model registry, you can find the recording and the minutes of the meetings a little less crowded because it was a national holiday in many countries yesterday. There is one, oh sorry, disappeared for.
Where did it go?
I moved it to the top. Sorry, Josh.
Okay, no worries. It's all right. And no, I just also wanted to say the chance. Thank you for the people who enabled the Kubeflow community YouTube channel to host the meetings recording. I've taken care of migrating all the recording and updating all the links from the minutes of the meeting to the new place. So that is working. And as the working group for model registry, we keep in tabs for the 1.9 sort of like loose ends or minor tasks that were updated. So that is just a brief update, but I wanted to seize the chance of communicating here. Thank you.
Oh my God, I didn't even see that you'd done that. Holy crap. Did you, that's great. But did you have any problems out of interest so that other people can learn?
No, I just followed your instructions. So I've I titled the YouTube video with the convention. I think it works fine with us. As well for the description, I also worked and checked that in the playlist you can find the past recording as unlisted, so they appear there, and they not kind of like pollute since I uploaded them today because I'm a citizen child of the office, which is a better bandwidth than at my place, because in Italy, unfortunately, we are not that covered with fiber optics, but at least Milano City is. So I did that today. So for the migration works fine with the editor role. And the only thing that just for you to know is that since I cannot delete a video by mistake, I've uploaded one video twice. So I just delete the duplicate, made it private. So you can just garbage collect it as soon as.
I just did that. I just saw that one. I just deleted it. Yeah.
Thank you. That was all. Thank you because it was very small.
Awesome. So I'm just glad to. And also, I'm assuming you sorted the playlist correctly because obviously because they're all uploaded on the same day, it'll be crazy ordered otherwise.
In chronological order as you request.
That's great. Also, I've tried to make it so that I'll just check that it's the case. I've tried to make it so that it does. On the home, even though it's an unlisted playlist, I've made it so that when you go to the Kubeflow community homepage of the YouTube channel, you can see the playlist highlighted instead of anything else. Obviously, we discussed last week that new recordings will be uploaded listed, not unlisted, if you will. But so I guess from today or whatever, we'll start uploading the recordings public, I guess. So be aware of that so people will start finding these recordings. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, but also they can find it from the docs. So I think it's like we had a good visibility. Definitely the playlist and being hosted on the Kubeflow community channel YouTube, it will definitely help to share awareness. So again, thanks.
Okay, 2 questions on the docs. I think there was a use case document explanation. Has that been merged?
Correct. It was merged as part of the merge that happened last week. So that is already is consolidated in the introduction as a use case section. So if you're referring Josh to what was like a Google Docs that we iterated over with Ramesh, you and others. So that is already part of the documentation on the Kubeflow website under model registry.
And that's one for notebooks and one for Kserve, right?
Then, in addition to the use case, there are tutorials, and that is indeed one that showcase integration of model registry Python client from a notebook, and then the other that showcase how you can use the Kserve SDK, in this case from Python notebook, because I thought it was easier, but to use it to populate an inference service based on the information from model registry. Yes.
Fantastic. Any other document that or documentation that got that? I thought there was another. Is there one pending that needs to get approved, or are we?
So there were a few comments that people had throughout, and what I did is that I've tracked all the requests in a tracker issue in Kubeflow model registry repo, but I already sent a PR for some of those comments. Andre and Matthew have already commented on that one, and I'm planning to keep tabs and progress on those, I could say, things that can be parallelized, because there is one that I just mentioned. There is another one that I'm planning to work for some diagrams that Andre and Stefano raised in the past. And these are things that I can now make sure that we can parallelize so that we don't hold on a big PR for too long.
Fantastic. So as a community, we've been we've been given feedback before that our documentation tends to be behind. I think that we need to applaud the model registry team here, because they've done a good job of trying to get the documentation up and available even before the code is available. This is, I think, an example of a best practice, and I appreciate how hard it is to get things posted. So thank you for doing that. And I recommend the users to take a look at those documentation, because I think this is going to be very helpful for people. Anything else on the model registry that you want to highlight before we move on?
No, I just, again, thank you for everybody, you, Josh, and the steering committee, and everybody who contributed feedback. Also, thank you for accepting to merge that pull request, because just speaking about documentation, yesterday at the bi-weekly meeting, some community users asked, oh, where can I find documentation? And I could tell them beyond the repository, I could show them that it's available on the Kubeflow website, and also with the links at the bottom of each page where to find more information for what they see in a specific page. So thank you for accepting that one PR merge, and then continue the work in parallel, because this is helping us to direct the user to a main landing page and then drive it forward to the correct places.
Perfect. All right.
One thing, you said that there was a Python package. So as I don't think Andre said it out loud, but we're going to be adding the Katib and training operator, maybe, I think, packages to the default notebook images. Is there a version of a Python SDK for the model registry that you would like us to add? Now, the one thing to be aware of is that these images don't get updated very often. So if you make breaking changes, it's probably better to just not have it there. You know what I mean?
Also, what I would say is that what I've seen, so thank you first of all for the offer. I would use, I will refer back to the working group at the next bi-weekly for this point, so to double check, but my sort of like gut feeling reaction will be to say not at this stage, in a later stage when the API is more stable, because these will guarantee us that we can do the tutorial like we did today, or the demos that I've recorded. Let's say, hey, just pip install this wheel. Is just so easy, because anyway it's a 10 layer. And actually the only thing that I've checked is that since we wrapped the Google MLMD Python wheel at this stage, so you have some kind of like strict constraint on the Python version, and I had some difficulties with the Jupyter images that are supplied. So that I could actually have the steps to say, hey, install this, and then it works on basically any image. So in short, I would say not at this stage, but definitely in a later stage.
So does your library currently depend on the MLMD package?
Correct. It's
okay, so if we could spend some development time to try and get that building on ARM, then I know that that's a problem upstream. but like also we can't include it unless it can be installed on ARM because our default images are both, with the exception of CUDA for obvious reasons. That will change, but upstream packages need to fix for ARM support with CUDA. But you need to make it so that your library works on ARM. And also doing that will also fix notebook pipeline's main V1 images as well, because there's a few V1 images that depend on MLMD. Well, actually, that's not the only problematic package in pipeline, so let's not say that. But the biggest one is that one is one of the bigger ones. So
yeah, that is a bigger problem, and I think that we can discuss it as a kind of like a focus meeting or a focus working group. But yeah, it's like for instance, I have a solution that allows that for when it's missing the Python version or when it's on the different architecture, we have kind of like another wrapper that solves for that. I see the Ricardo, you have raised hand.
Yeah, Matteo, is the plan for porting the MLMD code to go still in for model registry or pipelines?
This is a good question, but I think that we are in the stage where, per the original suggestion, now is the time to have the model registry out there and gather feedback so that we can understand better how to progress from that point onward. So to answer that question, per the original proposal, first, the feedback is best to be gathered.
So have we put a warning that says you can't install it on ARM just because macOS is quite popular?
But it's the same problem that you have as well for pipelines, isn't it?
Well, pipelines itself, well, that's a bit different, right? Because pip install, people kind of assume that it will work on their MacBook, especially for something like this, an SDK. Whereas, whereas with pipelines, you know,
okay.
they're quite, it's quite
So
an
I see your
intense
point. Okay.
thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the
So
SDK for pipelines, to be very clear, the SDK for pipelines does work on ARM.
Correct. So sorry. Okay. So in the case, what I can add to the documentation, fair point, what I can add to the documentation, thank you for raising this, is that we have a version of the MLMD Python wheel that doesn't depend on either Python version or either architecture, because it just do remote gRPC communication. So I can make a note about that for people who want to try that Python on an ARM-based architecture for the clients.
So quick question about that library. Is that still in its name called MLMD, or is it called something else?
It's a different version. It's called MLMD, so it's like, but you can install a different version like you do in Python with other stuff.
What I mean by that is like, so is its namespace still called MLMD?
Yes, so it's
So
like
you
don't
can't
need to
install it
change
at the
the code.
same time. So you can't install it at the same. Yeah, okay. So we should probably. This is my solution that I was thinking of, right? If the upstream MLMD doesn't want to, we could make our own, kind of like NVIDIA does for some forked packages. We could have like a Kubeflow PyPy, if you know what I mean, pypy.kubeflow.org or something, and users could add that as an extra packages. You know what I mean? And then we could, like, so that's how NVIDIA does it for some NVIDIA packages. So like maybe we could do that as a temporary solution, and so that we can still give people a pip install command rather than having to manually download a wheel, you know?
This option is the one that I found that at least for the model registry perspective of the client, Python helps, because it's like for the model registry Python client dialogues with the model registry only. It's not meant to be used to dialogue with the MLMD directly. So in a way, so that helps in our case because we only do gRPC communication. That Python wheel, however, this Python wheel doesn't, this variation doesn't solve the problem that if you want to use the Google MLMD by the way that is on their website, of course it doesn't work because it doesn't ship the binary for the specific architecture. So it's more a variation of the.
My recommendation then is to not call it the same thing, is to call it MLMD patches or gRPC like dash in there, and then have an if statement on your imports, just so that just to protect users from getting confused.
Yeah, I think it's pretty. We have the there is a document in the model registry repo that specify the scope for that wheel, for as well the naming version is compatible with the PEP 440 or 400, whatever it is for Python. And it makes it very clear that is a variation of an existing library, but only for a specific case. So I think it's pretty accurate and sort of like speaking.
I just worry a little bit about it because it's a little bit of a bad practice to release a package with the same name as someone else's package. That's just my only kind of feeling there, because it will prevent pip from installing the main package ever, right? Because if you say we have a version 1.5 or whatever of our thing, pip might view that as newer than the real version. I just think that
it's like you're installing a development version. It's like you are deliberately asking. It's like it's not part of our dependency. It's documented somewhere that there is this library available, and if you decide to manually install it, it's like you are going to your VM and just replacing it by hand. It's like you are instructing your environment to do something specifically. So it's very, I would say, deliberate, the instruction that you're following. So there is no confusion in my mind, at least.
Folks,
All right.
I think we're deviating from the main subject. Can we move this to the working group meeting?
Yeah, and the next is going to be in 2 weeks, so we are happy as well to have an agenda point for this item as well. Sorry, it's like I think that we sidetracked that.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Hey, I think we have a couple other topics here. Matthew's got a couple. I added one here at the end. I did want to bring this up just because kind of a broader scope thing. I don't know how many of you are watching NVIDIA, but they announced their earnings. I thought if you haven't listened to their earnings call, it was quite interesting to see the trends that are going on, especially in the sizes of the model and the way that Jensen is talking about the complexity now of serving, where serving is now not as simple as it was before, especially with large language model and generation. So the reason why I wanted to bring that up is that some folks say that we don't talk about, user impacting type stuffs and general trends and things like that. And I know we could get lost in conversation, but I was just wondering if anybody else kind of watched any of that NVIDIA earnings and the trends that we're seeing from them, because it's huge, the amount of revenue that they're generating, $25 billion or something like this per quarter and more next quarter. And, the growth of Blackwell and the trillion parameter capabilities of some of these chips, how this will impact Kubeflow. And I was just wondering if anybody has kind of thought about this.
So I can add my side, I've been in touch with multiple Kubernetes working groups, and I know that NVIDIA invested a lot in Kubernetes right now. I think from my perspective, we as a community should be more involved in such discussions. I know that Yuan, for example, already scheduled the orchestration work stream between KServe and Server working group in Kubernetes to see how these specific use cases are impacting the existing components. Also, we try to collaborate with Batch working group to, make the large models more accessible on the training on the serving side. I know that NVIDIA also invested a lot in DRA, which is dynamic resource allocation for NVIDIA GPUs on Kubernetes, which allows us to manipulate GPUs similar to CPUs on Kube. So I know that NVIDIA invested a lot on Kube right now, even with the acquisition of RunAI and other folks. So I just feel that we need to, get involved in such discussions and share our perspective and experience of all these topics. Yeah, just my 2 cents on this, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, there have been several people who have joined NVIDIA who worked closely in the Kubeflow community. Might be good that we reach out to a few of them and see if there are things that we need to think about, advantages that Kubeflow perhaps provides to large language model or generation that perhaps we're uniquely architecturally set up to support NVIDIA's vision. Anyway.
Yes. Yeah. What I want to do, like, and if we have anyone here on the call who is willing to help me, like, we want to ask for our end users what kind of, use cases they're solving with Kubeflow, especially on, on the GenAI space. Like, for example, like if you use some of the Kubeflow operators to, train large models, let us know. We can, work with you to create a blog post. For example, if you use API or if you use any other technologies, which is right now under Kubeflow ecosystem, let us know. And we can, promote your blog post to your use cases, so people can see the value of our ecosystem. We want to hear specifically from users what they're doing right now, what are the challenges you see, what kind of, problems you solve with our ecosystem or you're solving with other ecosystem. And I think it's just call to actions for people who, want to work with us on these specific topics.
Fantastic.
And we already we're already asking some of the users to, start a blog post about their journey and what they want to do next.
All right, so we'll leave that as a follow-up item. I just wanted to do a flyby quickly on that, have a quick discussion, because I do think that NVIDIA is a force out there that is changing the industry, whether we like it or not, and we need to pay attention to that, in my opinion. So, and they probably have some resources and users that, anyway, we need to work with. All right, Matthew, several items. Thank you very much. Let's go through the ones that you think are, do you want to take control of the?
No, it's fine. We can, I can show people if they really want, but I don't think it helps them that much. I just want to quickly go through them because they don't need to see anything. So
Okay.
there are three. So for those who aren't familiar, we use Prowl, which was created for Kubernetes. It's Google's open source bot. So that's how we merge PRs. It's how we do LGTM, approve, close, stuff like that. So our Prowl is running on the Google one. It's not running the Kubernetes one, but we have a bunch of plugins that we can enable. And I think 3 of them are of particular interest. Specifically, I'll just list them first, which is the DCO one, which I'll come back to why in a second. The transfer issue one, which allows you to move issues between repos, and the cherry picker plugin. The first one is important. The DCO one is important because currently our bot isn't properly enforcing DCO checks. So I just want to highlight to any maintainers that when you approve a PR, you are able to override. There's no, the actual, while it may look like a PR that's failing commit checks won't be able to be merged, it actually will be merged. So that means that literally anything, including the DCO, meaning like the legal licensing thing that just makes sure that people have, disclosed that they're able to submit under a license, isn't actually enforced. And so that is a risk. So that problem can be fixed by replacing the GitHub DCO bot with this, but that doesn't really affect users. I just wanted to say that if you're a maintainer, please be careful about approving PRs that don't have DCO checks passing, because that is a massive risk. Hey, yes, Ricardo?
Let me see if I get the same understanding here among the other maintainers. Since they are all PRs and they have proper checks, no matter if it's DCO or CLA, I think we got covered about contributions, right? So I think the biggest problem, and I saw this in the pipelines repo, that there are PRs that doesn't have any of these checks, and I think those are the biggest problems. So with respect, with having PRs that has still the Google CLA check, I won't care much. But yeah, I think having the DCO plugin enable would be good unless it doesn't affect the current implementation for the DCO checks.
So it does. So the reason it's important is, I mean, it's kind of legally ambiguous. So first off, now that we allow people to contribute without signing the CLA, people have to DCO every single commit. That's just how the DCO works. From like you have to sign each commit individually. The problem is that just due to the way that we merge PRs, it's just not enforced right now. Like there's a bot which says yes or no, but it's not actually enforced. Like the Prow bot will merge the PR regardless. That's the problem.
I understand what you're saying, but I think that we have a date where we made the migration from Google CLA to DCO. So my understanding is that every PR that was open before that change should still be covered by the Google CLA, right? So I don't believe it's a problem having a PR merger that has only the Google CLA check because it's a very old PR, right? I just want to validate if others agree on the same reasoning, or if we should consider that from now on, every PR that gets merged needs to have this year check. This is a broad community question.
I think it's different, Ricardo. Like I think the point that Matthew made that the problem is like, and I'm not sure if it's 100% true. I asked James to enable DCO as the mandatory check for merging PRs. I'm not sure if Pro actually ignoring this mandatory check.
It does. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
No, but like for example, if some of the GitHub actions have failed, like Pro didn't merge the PRs unless all the checks will be succeeded. Like
I think you might be being mistaken there because I regularly merge PRs that have failing checks.
No, but I mean, like you can easily add LGTM and approve labels on every PR, and if some of the checks will be failed, you won't be like PRs won't be merged.
No, they actually are. They are. That may be the case on other repos, but it's not the case on ours.
For training operator and KTIP, they won't. And I saw this several times. Unless all the checks on GitHub actions will be completed, like the PRs won't be merged. Because like we have this as a mandatory check in our settings of the repo.
I think I actually think you're mistaken.
Maybe I can give you an example right now if you don't believe me.
Okay, I'll take a look. But maybe your repo. So also the Prow configs are really, really long. There is a small chance that the training operator has a specific setting enabled under the branch protection rule plugin, but the rest of the repos don't, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, but I mean, like we can enable the same like branch protection on every repo. So
what I'm saying is that I'm not aware of a setting which would have that effect. If there is one, then that would be great.
Yeah, so if you open this PR, you will see it, right?
I'm interested to see it. Yeah, because that would also be a great workaround. But let me just...
Similar to this, like we asked James to enable DCO as mandatory check to GitHub actions.
Yeah, so I did that on not pipelines. I did that on Kubeflow, notebooks, and website, and all three of those ignore it in my experience. So, so this problem here is...
Yeah, as you can see, pending non-mergeable, right? So
that is interesting. I do wonder what its status is. This is weird. Anyway, okay. So in any case, this is interesting. I don't know exactly why this one specifically isn't being merged, but you would expect this one to be merged. Some of these might be actually because some of these checks came from Prow itself rather than GitHub Actions.
So I think, Matthew, like you need to investigate this more. I mean, I would suggest you to open an issue. I agree that we probably need to do something with DCO, and if this won't work, we should enable it via Pro, as you said.
Yeah. Conversely, yeah, if you want to look at the PR above, I mean, you don't need to open it, but like the one above is a converse example, which has the PR was merged even though it shouldn't have been. Also, the problem with the DCO bot is normally there's a setting. So I would love to just continue using the bot, but very technically there's a bug or issue with the bot that makes it so that it doesn't set a context. I think it's because it's an official bot or something. And that context is how Prow can detect whether it should allow merges or not. And since it doesn't,
yeah, sorry, like because we also have a problem because if new contributor come to the community and they open the PR, GitHub actions won't be triggered. And that is why, like, sometimes we're just ignoring the CI/CD before merging them. We have LGTM and approved label.
So the reason why that's the case is that's a massive security risk if we don't do that.
Yeah, so there are several issues. Maybe I think we should discuss them offline. Like there are a lot of things we need to do. and I'm okay to follow the same approach across multiple repos to address them.
And yeah, I think the safest solution is probably just to use the official Kubernetes DCO check thing, but it's because it guarantees that Prowl won't merge it. It allows us to do things like, the only negative is that the DCO bot from GitHub does allow manual overrides, which actually might be a negative, not actually a positive, So like, I'm not sure.
So
But
my understanding on the Pro plugin, one of the big advantages of using the Pro plugin is that you can issue a command to enforce checking the DCO. If there's a way to do the same for the GitHub DCO bot, then maybe you can stick to the DCO, the GitHub DCO bot and not using the Pro. But I don't have an opinion on that, as well as we could have ways to enforce DCO check for the new PRs.
I'll look into under why that PR. Well, I mean, my suspicion is that PR has checks which are coming from somewhere that's not GitHub Actions, and they're actually coming from Prowl. But in general, I don't recommend trying it, but you can definitely merge PRs that are not passing checks in general. Okay, anyway, so the next two plugins. So these ones are even more interesting, but the DCO is more of a legal question, so just be careful. The transfer issue plugin is very cool. So it is like, we have a big problem where, especially because the Kubeflow repo is the main repo, people raise a lot of issues that are not related to Kubeflow stuff in there, like pipelines, manifests, all the other things. So because to be able to transfer an issue, you have to have effectively admin on the org. We're obviously not ever really going to be able to do that. So I think that we should enable this plugin and set some rules as to like what the rules are for migrating, because obviously there are some cases where an issue kind of affects everyone and it's not specific to any section, but maybe it has some relation to pipelines. And in those cases, I think we should agree that only the people who maintain the repo itself should transfer the issues, and B, so where the issue was raised, I mean, and B, if it's ambiguous, it should just stay on Kubeflow or Kubeflow community if it's non-technical. But we can enable this plugin pretty trivially. That's just a side question to anyone.
So Matthew, really like that idea. Let me ask you something. Does the transfer plugin transfer all the history behind the issue, or just transfer the original description?
It transfers the full issue. So what happens is that issue stops existing on the original repo and becomes a redirect to the new repo.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a must-have. For Kubeflow org.
Yep, I'd agree. I've tried to use it many times and I keep forgetting that it wasn't enabled because it's enabled on Kubernetes. But yeah. Okay. And so we can enable that one. I just need to get a Googler to approve it in the upstream repo, but I can make that PR in the next week or so. The last one is another really important one, but this is kind of slightly different to how we currently. I'll just share my screen because it seems like people can't see this anymore. This last one is called Cherry Picker. So this plugin here is really cool. Rather than having to manually cherry pick, say you have multiple releases that are supported and we have PRs into master that are merged, and we want to subsequently or after they're merged create cherry pick PRs into 3 or 4 release branches. The command for this one is looks like this, which is down the bottom. So effectively, you can just specify cherry pick and then / a release. And so you could specify a bunch of these at the same time if you had multiple releases supported. And what the bot will do is it won't merge anything, but it will the bot itself will create these PRs, which is important because it means that the LGTM approval process, because right now to do a cherry pick, you need 2 different people because you're not the author, right? So you're the author of the cherry pick PR. That's the issue. So you'd need another LGTM.
How it is going to resolve the conflicts?
Well, okay, that is its own kind of problem. Obviously, if you have conflicts, you'll have to either have write access to the repo and then push to the branch that it's cherry picking from, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or you'll have to make your own manual cherry pick, you know. Or again, you can still cherry pick using, if you have write access to the repo using git commands, of course, but not everyone has that. And you know, it's just an idea. So this one is, I'm not as, you know, we don't need it as much, but at least for notebooks, this will be quite useful.
Yeah, I think cherry pick is a cool idea if we can solve the problem with conflicts. But like, I think from our side, it would be nice. We were thinking about enabling the GitHub Actions bot, but like maybe this is even better, following the Kubernetes best practice.
Yeah, so there's other CNCF projects or just projects that use Prow, like Istio that already use this bot, and Argo and things like that. So it might, I mean, it's clearly widely used, is what I'm saying. And Kubernetes itself, obviously, Kubernetes itself also uses it. But I agree that merging conflicts might be a problem, but as long as we cherry pick often, and you know, as soon as we know that a PR is going to be in a release, we should cherry. Because what you can do is you can actually write the cherry pick command. You shouldn't probably, but you can actually do it before the PR is merged, and then it will queue it up to be happening once it's merged. Okay. Any other comments about cherry pick? So I mean, the question is, do you want me to, when I make the PR, to enable the DCO transfer issues, should I also enable cherry pick, is what I'm saying.
So before you enabling this, Matthew, can you start in community issue for all of them, and we can first do investigation before enabling them? Like,
I mean, we can. Which ones do we? I mean, the DCO one definitely needs a bit of discussion, but it's pretty risky. We need to just do that one as soon as possible. But for transfer issue and cherry pick, yeah.
yeah, I mean, what are the others think on this? Like,
Is there an operational change or anything that's going to impact folks if we make these changes outside of the actual issue that we're trying to solve? Is there going to be any ramifications otherwise?
The only significant change is that, as I was saying, in some of these cases, except the DCO one, like the transfer and cherry pick, are new commands that people can run. So that means that by default, I believe it's not everyone that can run these two ones because they're quite powerful commands, but any member, I think for cherry pick you need to be in a trusted group to do it. For transfer issue, I believe anyone can do it. So that is the only issue. It becomes that people might misuse it if they're members, you know what I mean?
so
Or
this is like,
accidentally.
I think, yeah, Matthew, I think this, from my perspective, is an important thing that we need to like discuss before we enabling this by default, right? And discussed on the ACLs, right? Who has permission, right? How it should define its permission. I
don't think there is any specific permissions supported by the plugin. Let me just confirm. So if we go transfer issue, yeah, I believe just we can check under here. Command help. So org members, yeah, so anyone can transfer issues. But it does seem like something that most people wouldn't do randomly. It's a bit of a weird thing to do. But we just need to have an agreement on the rules, like, you know, don't go onto pipelines and transfer issues to random repos, you know, things like that. But for cherry pick, you have to actually be trusted for that repo. So that one's not really a problem from a security perspective. Okay, any other comments there? Yeah, okay, nothing else?
All right, I think we're at time. So
There's one
It was
last
a good
thing I just
meeting.
quickly
Thank
want to highlight is that if you don't use milestones, use them. Take a look at how we're using them in Kubeflow. It will save you so much pain for creating releases. Milestones just let you create targets for particular versions and add issues and PRs to them. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, that's all.
All right, good advice. Thank you, everyone. I think that's it for today. Thanks for your time. I'm going to close out the meeting.